Hello. I'm very sick today, but I'm here to answer a question about my movie, which I've heard a lot recently going around. It's how does your product use or challenge conventions, and how does it represent social groups or issues? So, my product is a crime drama film opening, and it both follows and challenges general conventions while also representing certain social issues through the characters. First, in terms of conventions, I did follow the idea of central crime. Most crime dramas are built around a major case, like a murder, or there's a murder out on the loose. In my opening, that crime is a serial killer case. I show I show pictures of three victims to immediately establish the seriousness of the situation. Sorry. This follows the genre because crime films usually begin by showing the stakes early on so the audience understands what is at risk exactly. I also followed conventions by adding a Hannibal type character into my movie, which is it just means that it's a highly intelligent but dangerous criminal who the detectives may need help from in order to solve their serial killer case at the moment. And this kind of character likes to create tension because the audience knows that they're unpredictable, including the twist that shows like how desperate the detectives are. They're willing to consult someone that's morally questionable because them themselves are, because the Hannibal type character is a murderer, and obviously they're detectives, so that kind of goes against their morals. However, I did challenge a common convention that like a lot of crime dramas use very dark lighting and shadow heavy scenes. Instead of doing that, I set my opening in a more office environment with clearer lighting. I did this intentionally to create like a bureaucratic feeling. Like the tension isn't just about the killer, but also just just about the system and public perception. It shows that the detective's decision could also be seen as like, controversial or even incompetent by others. So instead of using the darkness, like dark shadows, etc., to create tension, I used moral conflict. And this is good because, in terms of representation, at least, the main social group are police officers. Crime dramas often show cops as either perfect heroes or completely corrupt. I try to do both in a way, to reinforce and challenge those stereotypes. I reinforce it in the sense that the detectives are like determined and willing to do whatever it takes in order to solve the current crime that's, the murder that's out on the loose, which is like a common portrayal of cops. But I also challenge the stereotype by showing disagreement and eternal conflict between the two detectives, like by them arguing whether they should trust the criminal, which obviously no cop would trust a criminal. And they're also not completely confident in their decision to involve the Hannibal type character, which makes it feel more realistic. The main issue I do represent is the idea of doing what's right versus doing nothing because you're afraid of controversy. The detectives understand that consulting a killer could lead damage, they it could have damage to their reputation or make them look incompetent because they're trusting a killer instead of trying to figure out the crime themselves. But they believe that saving lives is more important than public opinion or their reputation, which just adds a deeper meaning to their character. Through media language, I reinforce these ideas by using costume, sound, editing. For example, like the detectives, they wear professional clothing, which immediately signals authority, because of their suits. The dialogue is important too because from their back and forth arguing shows that they're not completely, like they don't agree with each other. But at the end of the day, that shows their character and their development. Overall, I feel like my product follows crime slash drama conventions through the central serial killer case and the inclusion of a Hannibal type character. But it does challenge expectations through lighting, and it focuses more on ethical conflict and then visual darkness. It does also represent police officers in a way that both reinforces and questions common stereotypes.